Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Petrick and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
It's going well. We went to F&M this week, and we got to take these shiny new Aaron Kane deck boxes, and everyone was super duper impressed. So thank you, Aaron Kane, again.
Yeah. Again, thank you. Super, super nice gift, and they are super sweet.
I'm holding mine right now. I don't like to leave the house without it.
It's your new security blanket.
Yeah.
But F&M, what did you play?
I went 3-1 with Boros tokens. The curse continued. 3-0 undefeated. Lost my pair down 4th round.
I played Blue-Black Alchemy. I went 2-2, and I feel like if I hadn't gotten paired against Elves last round, I would have had a chance at the 3-1. And round 1, I just got paired against Land Destruction, and each game you had early Land Destruction, and I just...
Red-green Land Destruction?
No, just green Land Destruction ramp, try to get like a Manvuli Acid Moss off as quickly as possible and ramp into a Ulamog's Crusher.
My God, some people.
But and then I got paired Elves last round. I played against Slivers. That's one that I haven't seen in a while.
The premier tribal deck. No, I guess not really.
I mean
it's the deck with the lords and the of the format.
It's the one that plays the most like a tribal deck in Modern. Like it kind of plays like Merfolk, where you're just trying to like resolve lords and bash in.
But we actually do have elves and goblins and poppers, so it's not really the premier tribal deck, but the one that functions the most like Merfolk in Modern.
Yeah.
If they didn't have counter spells and Aether, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say here.
Oh, actually, someone pointed it out to me. That's actually kind of a pricey deck in paper. I hadn't realized
Slivers?
that. Yeah, because like a bunch of them are like $1. I don't know. It was just a weird side note.
That's because Slivers are one of those tribes that
EDH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big casual tribe.
And then I also got to play the mirror, the Blue-Black Alchemy mirror, and it's actually really an enjoyable matchup.
I've been playing some Blue-Black Alchemy online. It's a lot of fun.
It is. It's got some very interesting lines, and I like it more than the time I've spent with teachings, just because, haha jokes. It's actually got a win con in it, but it is nice to not have to rely on like 3 cards as your win con.
It's a win con that's not Curse the Bloody Tome or Evankar's Justice.
Exactly. And it's got a pretty decent matchup with a lot of the field. That Elves matchup though is miserable. Like my out was literally just drawing into multiple Shrivels post board. And even that, like, I got 1 game off him and I feel good about that. So Elves still really difficult to interact with, just in general. Any interesting matchups from you?
No. I mean, they're all interesting in their own way.
I mean, it's Boros tokens. It's kind of, you're smashing face and not really caring what they're doing.
I played against Delver, and I brought in Ancient Grudge, and that was a good call.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
You can destroy Serrated Arrows, which he wasn't playing, but you can destroy 2 Spire Golems with it.
I don't know if I've seen Serrated Arrows in that list for a while, but it's probably still okay.
Our local player prefers Prodigal Sorcerer.
Have you told him about Thornwind Fairies?
I don't know that card, so no.
It's
Aaron, don't listen to this part. Mike, go ahead.
It's a Prodigal Sorcerer, except it flies, and it's blue 1 instead of 2 and a blue.
But it's a 1/1 that pings.
It's a 1/1 flyer that pings, and it's also a fairy, so it counts towards Spell Stutter.
Oh, I have not told him about that. I think that he would be thrilled, though. But I don't know. He has 7th edition foil Prodigal Sorcerers, and they look really cool. So,
actually, let me just check real quickly on my phone. I'm trying to remember. I think Thornwind Fairies is Saga, so it might not actually have a foil, and I know that he is.
Oh well, if there's no foil, then you basically can't play it. I also played against my losing matchup was Teachings, which we don't think is a very good matchup for Boros tokens. Also played against Tordex, which was fine, and trying to think of the other one. It'll come to me. It's not coming to me, but it will eventually. It's halfway through the show, so
yeah. We'll just blurt it out when it comes to mind. So last week we talked a lot about mono black, and this week we're coming back with another tier deck.
Another monocolored tier deck.
And this one's actually one that's still putting up pretty good results. Although, after our discussion last week, today there was actually a result that came in from the daily league reporting. Someone was playing mono black control, splashing blue
For Mole Drifter?
No, for 2 copies of Soul Manipulation and a couple of sideboard cards.
Huh.
Like they were playing a very, very little splash, and apart from that, it was just mono black in like its traditional form.
So mono black, maybe not mono black anymore.
I mean, that was something we touched on the show, and it's cool to see like some of that coming true. But it very much was like, it wasn't just like, oh, they're playing good black control cards. It was like Chittering Rats, Witches, Grey Merchant, Oubliettes, Edict Effects, and then like a couple Soul Manipulations.
Soul Manipulation does seem pretty good in that deck.
Well, yeah, because you've got all these ETB value creatures. Like, it seems fine. But this week we're talking about the big green menace, Stompy. And Stompy has been a deck for ages, this format and in other formats. The original incarnation of it actually plays a card that I believe the Pauper version used to play, Rogue Elephant. The
3/3 for 1 where you sack a forest? Is that what it does? Okay.
It's a 3/3 for a green that when it ETBs, you sack it unless you sack a forest. It might be a basic forest. I don't remember. But the point is, Stompy decks are green decks, generally very low curve.
Why do they not play that card anymore? That card is great.
Because it puts you back on a land drop, and you're already running like 18 lands.
All right. Like, who cares? Jeez. 3/3.
I've heard that the original combo was that turn 1, and then I believe it's called Fallow Worm. It's a 4/4 for 1 and a green, and when it enters the battlefield, you have to sack it unless you return a land from your graveyard to, I think, the top of your library.
All right, man. This is sweet.
So the combo was turn 1 3/3, turn 2 4/4, and then just kind of swing.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good still.
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds pretty good.
So let's look at the current list. And this list was, oh god, I screwed up. I was gonna say who piloted this. I cannot pronounce this username. HRYMFAXE, Hermfax.
Thank you, Hermfax.
And this is a 5-0 from the 11th of December 2016.
So pretty recent.
Very recent. And so let's start off with creatures, because that's really where this deck is focused.
Right, and the philosophy is, is it undercosted?
Yeah, there's lots of just like really good power to mana cost trades, I think.
Yeah.
So starting off the list, 2 Basking Root Wallas, and this is a 1/1 with 1 and a green, gets +2/+2 until end of turn, play this ability only once a turn, and Madness for 0. So if you can discard this, it's free.
And while we're on that subject, we might as well mention there's also 2 wild mongrels in the deck which enable this. And Mike and I were talking about this a little bit before the show. This is a combo that sort of goes in and out of favor with the deck. There was a time where these cards weren't really seeing a whole lot of play, but I guess they're back being on vogue.
Well, let me point something out. A lot of black control decks that have been playing at least like a singleton copy of Doomblade,
and that's where
Mongrel actually gets around that. Yeah. So it does get you a tiny percentage point there.
Wild Mongrel, for those of you who don't know, also the other deck in Odyssey Block Constructed, the Togger, the dog.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there. I feel like some people don't remember that. So.
And while we're on it, Wild Mongrel is a 2/2 for 1 and a green, and it has the ability to discard a card. Wild Mongrel gets +1/+1 until end of turn and becomes the color of your choice.
Right, which is why that ability is also super relevant, is because you can make it black in response to a Doomblade. Or anything else in response to a Hydroblast if you wanted to. I don't know why you would.
Yeah, if you've somehow made it red for some reason.
Yeah. Maybe you like to live dangerously.
But Wild Mongrel, actually part of a cycle. The rest are so terrible no one remembers them.
Okay, well, I don't remember them, so what do the rest of them do?
I think the blue one's like a bear that bounces to your hand if it blocks or attacks.
Please.
The white one, you pitch cards to give it first strike. The black one has some terrible downside, and so does the red one. They're all terrible, and then Wild Mongrel is just sweet. Moving on, we've got Nettle Sentinel, the first of our undercosted 2/2s.
Nettle Sentinel also played in Legacy and Modern. It's a 2/2 elf for G that whenever you cast a green spell, you untap Nettle Sentinel.
And it doesn't untap as normal.
Correct.
if you got to keep the spells coming, otherwise it's not getting untapped.
But it's an amazing creature. Like
Yeah.
it's played in elves also as with the Birchlore Rangers combo, but really
Mm-hmm.
it's just a great beater.
Yeah. Then we've got 4 copies of Quirion Ranger, which is 1 green for a 1/1 elf. And it has the ability return a forest to your hand, untap target creature. So in this deck, it kind of pulls double duty. It's untapping stuff and
Metal
allowing you to
Sentinels,
play.
maybe.
Sometimes you use it to untap Nettle Sentinel, but the bigger kind of boon from it is the fact that this is a low land count deck. A lot of times you're just using it to get an extra mana out of a forest because you tap your forest for mana, you bounce it to your hand, you play it again, and it also helps enable landfall for stuff we'll be seeing later in this list.
Right.
Then we got 4 copies Skargan Pit Skulk. It's a 1/1 for 1 with Bloodthirst 1. So it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you dealt damage to an opponent.
And the great thing about it is that creatures with power less than Skargan Pit Skull cannot block it. So it's a great target for pump spells, which we'll get to in a minute. Rancor, which we'll also get to in a minute. Really, it's just another like incredible 1-drop that helps push through damage.
Yeah, it's evasive in a uniquely. I think this is basically like a green ability, right? I can't think of any other colors that really get access.
Right.
To
the only other card I can even think of off the top of my head in our format is Orin Arlid.
Can I tell you the one thing that really, really bothers me about this card, though?
What?
The fact that they made an ability called Skulk that is actually the inverse of the ability printed on Pit Skulk.
Creatures with power greater.
All right. Moving on. 4 copies Young Wolf. Young Wolf used to be a sideboard card for this deck, right? And is now just in the main deck. Young Wolf is just a 1/1 for 1 green with Undying. So when it dies the first time, it comes back with a +1/+1 counter on it, and if it dies with a +1/+1 counter on it, it stays dead.
And I mean, this is great. Like these sort of sticky creatures are like, you know, they're removal resilient. You have to like block them. They're hard to block. Like they're just really, really good creatures.
And ideally, you know, if your opponent's not playing a removal heavy deck, you just trade this. You chump or trade this thing in combat, and then you have a 2/2 that you spent 1 mana on.
Right.
It's super solid. Then we've got 2 copies of Garrix Companion. 2 green for a 3/2 with trample.
Garrix Companion, yes.
Oh, did I mess that one up? I always forget how you're supposed to pronounce it.
I think people pronounce it both ways. Don't worry about it.
I know there's an official way, and I think Garrick is correct, but I waver back and forth.
I wasn't trying to call you out though or anything.
No,
I was just reiterating the name of the card for our listeners at home. It wasn't you.
And there's nothing really to say about this. Like the companion is just efficient.
Right. It's just a 3/2 with trample for GG. I guess if there was some sort of devotion element to the list, maybe that would matter, but there's not. So
yeah, it's just good.
Yeah.
Then we got 2 copies of Riverboa. Riverboa is 1 and a green. It's a 2/1, and it has Island Walk and regenerates for a single green mana. Blue is a good color in this format, I hear.
Yeah. So Riverboa is good. Also, the regeneration clause means that it is incredibly difficult to kill a Riverboa once it's out on the field.
And I think that this sort of represents the fact that Stompy over the years has moved towards being a little bit more resilient, some lists more so than others, but it's playing these creatures that you have a hard time either using targeted removal or edicts on.
And there's also, of course, the plane shifted version, Maybeboard, which has Swamp Walk.
Oh, that's right. It is a planar chaos card, isn't it?
Yes.
And that sometimes will show up in the main deck, sometimes in sideboard. Black decks have not been doing super great as of late, so it's kind of fallen out of favor.
But this is a list that you can tech, certain cards in. So
you can tech the hell out of this. Also, fun trivia: Riverboa is the first F&M promo ever.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got the really goofy art with like an actual just regular snake poking its head out of a river.
It's the Visions art, right?
Yes, it's the Visions art.
Ooh, that's good to know. Maybe I'll get some of those promos. I do love those old boarded promos.
Oh yeah, they're actually really gorgeous. Then we got 2 copies of Solhana Ledgewalker, Boggles All-Star, 1 and a green for a 1/1 with hexproof, and it cannot be blocked except by creatures with flying.
So, but it itself does not have flying.
It itself does not have flying. Also worth noting, can't be blocked by creatures with reach.
Right.
Which is a frustrating thing to explain, but thankfully, if someone ever doubts you on this, Gatherer.com just has the ruling it cannot be blocked by creatures with flying. It's one of those weird little things. But this dude's evasive, gets in, and just it lets you make sure that you can get around blockers.
Also a great Rancor target.
Yeah. Also shines against targeted removal. Like, a deck without black really doesn't have a lot of ways to deal with this creature. I mean, I guess Holy Light might get it, but that's about it. Then we got 2 copies of Vault Scourge in the main deck, and this is actually technically kind of a black card, but, 1 in a black Phyrexian mana, so it's always going to be 1 mana and 2 life in this deck.
Right.
For a 1/1 flying lifelink.
An affinity special.
Modern affinity.
Modern affinity, yeah. Without cranial plating, it's a lot worse.
Without cranial plating, it's a lot worse. But putting a pump spell on this and just being like, "All right, I've gained back like 5 life."
Yeah, it's basically a card that's like deal with me or lose.
Yeah. The fact that it also is flying is useful. You can block with this guy against a fast deck that's got evasion. I don't know. This, again, used to be a sideboard card, and I'm still not 100% sold on it in the main deck. Especially against other aggro decks, it feels like if they can remove it, you're just out even more life.
Well, that's where it's so good is because it can gain all that life back.
Next on the list... Oh, actually, sorry. Since this list is alphabetized, the next one's Wild Mongrel, which we already discussed. On to the spells, then. So, we've got 4 copies of Groundswell. This is a pump spell for green. It's +2/+2. But if you have landfall, so if you've played a land this turn, maybe because you bounce one with Quirion Ranger, the creature gets +4/+4 instead. So it's just a bigger giant growth.
It's giant growth that's sometimes worse, but more than often better.
I would say on average it's probably better.
Right. Groundswell's a heck of a card.
A lot of the time you're holding on to it. Speaking of +4/+4 pumps, Vines of the Vastwood. Vines of the Vastwood, green, target creature cannot be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control, and it has kicker of a green, and if you pay the kicker, the creature also gets +4/+4.
And because of the wording on the first clause, there are all sorts of shenanigans you can do with this card.
Yes, please note, it looks all the world like it gives a creature hexproof. It doesn't.
It gives creature protection from spells that your opponent would cast.
Yeah.
Even so what we're saying is you could do this on someone else's creature, and then their spell would fit. Their beneficial spell would fizzle.
People talked about this when Drake was still in the meta as being something where you can target the Drake with it, and then they can't target the Drake with Flicker.
Right.
Weird. It doesn't come up that much, but it definitely is kind of like a nice out against some combo decks where you can just be like, yeah, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, it's a very, very good card. But yeah, it has a lot of wiggle room for shenanigans.
Then we got 2 copies of Mutagenic Growth. More goodness from New Phyrexia.
Free pump spell. 2 life, give your creature +2/+2 till end of turn.
Notably, though, it's a green Phyrexian mana. So like sometimes it is just green, give your guy +2/+2.
Right.
But the fact that it can be free, so good. Phyrexian mana, probably top 5 like mistakes in design in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just solid, right? Also noteworthy, all these are instants, so that is relevant. The only sorcery in the list is, or main deck at least, is a 1 of Epic Confrontation. Now this is 1 in a green. Target creature gets +1/+2 until end of turn, and then fights another creature. So they both deal damage to each other.
So pump your dude, kill their guy, attack with the team.
Yeah,
and you'll notice a lot of these spells are overlap with Infect. Whereas those lists will try and go all in on one creature, which this deck can also do. I feel like more often than not, this deck is using these pump spells to not only just get in more damage, but also as removal spells for opponents' larger creatures or as a protective way to defend them. So they're a very flexible pump spell suite, where it plays almost like a green Sly deck.
Yeah.
more than just like a glass cannon.
Also, people have referred to this as, the green burn deck.
Right.
Because you're kind of just always going to face, and sometimes you're going to eat the creatures along the way. There's a single artifact in here. Can you guess what it is?
Bone Saw.
Bone Splitter.
Bone Saw. I knew it was Bone Splitter. I just wanted to say Bone Saw like the Spider-Man movie.
I know. I can't fault you. Bone Splitter, 1 colorless equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and it equips for 1 generic.
I saw Owen Turtenwald once trash Bone Splitter, and I was like, clearly he's never played Pauper.
Yeah. Bone Splitter is, I think, the most efficient, just like straight pumping a creature for 1 mana equipment.
Equipment, yes. I was like, you're forgetting about the other +2/+ spell,
which is right next on the list. 4 copies of Rancor. This is the quintessential spell of.
Well, this is the spell that makes this deck a tier 1 deck.
Yeah. So Rancor, 1 green, enchantment aura, enchant creature, enchanted creature gets +2/+0, gains trample, and then the very important wording: if Rancor would go to the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to your hand.
Right.
Which is...
And I would even feel confident saying this is basically the cranial plating of the deck.
I feel okay with that statement.
This is what really helps your guys punch through and, really, really be threats instead of a motley crew of 2/2s and 1/1s.
Well, that's the other thing. You can slap this on anything and it becomes a threat that's bad to block. Like, you can toss this, like, some of the Stompy lists used to play Nest Invader that came along with an Eldrazi spawn. I've seen people slap Rancors onto an Eldrazi spawn.
Oh, there are really no Nest Invaders in this deck?
There's no Nest Invaders in this version. Generally, Wild Mongrel takes the place of the Nest Invaders. And now that a lot of these lists are running Young Wolf in the main, they already kind of have a little bit of built-in Edict protection, so they don't really need the spawn token as much. But,
that's fair.
But Rancor just... Oh my god, it's an absurd card.
It's an incredible spell.
Yeah. Again, another...
Like, all of it's good. Like, +2.
Yeah.
All right. Trample. Okay. That's pretty good. And then it's like, oh, by the way, your opponent can almost never get rid of it unless they're planning on it. And it's like, oh, okay.
For note, for those of you playing against this deck, the ways to get rid of this are... It is a triggered ability. It's not a replacement effect where it goes to your hand instead of going to the graveyard. It does hit the graveyard for a split second. If you have incidental graveyard hate, you can get rid of it.
Like a relic.
Like a relic.
Or if you respond to it being cast on the creature by killing the creature, it never enters the battlefield, just goes to the graveyard.
Also just countering it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to resign yourself to the fact that a lot of times, even if you do have the counter spell, it's going to take you killing their thing and then countering it on the way back down. It's really solid. And it's actually it's weird. Bone Splitter is kind of similar, barring the trample, because it's a way to pump a creature's power by 2 that keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Then lands, 16 forests. Done. Just...
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid.
Let's not mess around with this. And then moving into the sideboard. And the sideboard on this has some general things that it kind of tries to do just to sort of shore up matchups. But let's go over the specific list that we pulled. 2 copies Gutshot, a red Phyrexian mana, instant, deal 1 damage to target
Starting to
creature.
notice a little sub-theme with this deck.
Yeah. You play a lot of spells that are Phyrexian mana because they're free.
Yeah, and this is mostly for Delver lists.
Delver lists.
Also very good against Standard Bearer, which this deck has a hard time with.
Yes. Standard Bearer is the bane of this deck's existence. And Gutshot deals with that very well. It can also just hit an opponent.
The Gutshot her around the world LSV style.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't come up often, but having that out of just being ping you to death.
But wouldn't you just rather play Hornet Sting?
How much does Hornet Sting cost?
G.
Is it green, deal 1 damage to creature player?
I think it might just be players, but it's the salt value. But no, that's a terrible card compared to Gutshot. So
then we got 2 copies Natural State. This is a Oath of the Gatewatch special, which gave green 2 really solid cards. The other being Pulse of Marasa. Natural State is green instant, destroy target artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less, and this often translates into a 1 mana instant speed Stone Rain against Affinity.
Right.
It's really good there. It can also do work against decks that need Prophetic Prism to function.
Yeah. Also kills rival Vault Scourges.
It does.
You know, just throwing that out there. I'm not sure you'd bring that in the mirror, but it does.
Yeah. It does have a lot of applications. Single copy Relic of Progenitus, you need to be able to deal with graveyard decks.
Basically, Relic of Progenitus is one of those ubiquitous popper sideboard cards. Like, you basically can't leave home without it.
Yeah, and this deck only devotes one slot to it because it is a very fast deck, and sometimes it can just beat the graveyard decks. So it's better for it to shore up other matchups, such as playing cards like Scattershot Archer.
Which are 3 of them in this sideboard, right?
Yep, 3 of them. So 1 green for a 1/2, and it has the ability to tap, deal 1 damage to each creature with flying. Sure, it kills your own Vault Scourges. With Quirion Ranger, you can get rid of Delvers because you can reuse this guy. Like,
this is the Delver.
Yeah.
I mean, Delver has a pretty tough time with the mono green decks, this one included, because these decks are fast, and Delver doesn't have hard removal.
Delver doesn't have hard removal, and it also, they're playing 2-mana counterspells, right? So it kind of gets to the point where you're keeping up 2 mana to counter their 1 mana spell.
Now, in the case of Spell Stutter, it's fine.
In the case of Spell Stutter, it feels okay, but Stompy is definitely a deck that has a very good Delver matchup, just because you can kind of go under them.
Right.
In case you haven't noticed, there is nothing in this list that costs more than 2 mana, and most of it's 1.
Right.
Like, you are very, very efficient. Then we got the other 3 copies of Epic Confrontation, which we've gone over. Definitely there for punching through.
Very good in the mirror.
It helps in the mirror. Would you bring this in? I'm trying to think. It does help against mirror matches with flyers that are getting through.
But it also really helps versus like goblins or
because you can take out the key part of the equation.
It's Stompy's form of creature removal.
And it's not that
targeted
bad.
Creature removal.
I've also seen lists back when Drake was illegal that were playing Pit Fight, which is, it doesn't have the pump, but it is an instant speed one.
Aerial Volley was also very popular back in the Drake era.
And then 4 copies of Gleeful Sabotage.
Because Affinity, just get Shrek Affinity.
Yep. Gleeful Sabotage, for those who are unaware, is 1 and a green sorcerer. You destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it has Conspire, which is a mechanic out of
Shadowmoor? Eventide?
I forget.
It's that block.
It's specifically the second half of that block? I think so.
It's Shadowmoor or Eventide.
And Conspire is tap 2 creatures that share a color with this spell, copy this spell.
So it's being cast. Double Stone Rain.
It's double Stone Rain. I have always had slight issues with it in this list, just because
it's a little slow.
And it really slows down your main game plan.
But my counter argument to that would be, isn't blowing up two key artifacts worth it?
And sometimes it's just game, right?
Yeah.
You've played a lot of Affinity. You've had those hands where you were a little light on land, and
it can be just game.
Yeah.
Affinity is a juggernaut of a deck, but it loses to its own inconsistencies.
In terms of cost, and I actually find this interesting, this deck costs, and I'm going into cents this time, from TCG Player today, date of recording, the 18th, $51.76. Buying it from Card Hoarder, $51.90. It's literally less than a quarter difference in terms of price from online and paper. That said, we like to talk about, are these cards applicable elsewhere? And a decent chunk of them aren't.
Yeah, well, the most expensive cards in the deck are Quirion Rangers and Nettle Sentinel Online, right? Yes. And those are cards that you can also play in Elves.
And those are some of the only cards in this deck that get played in other decks. Like, I'm looking through Basking Root Walla and Wild Mongrel sometimes show up in more madness-oriented builds of Tortured Existence. Mutagenic Growth shows up in Delver Fiend decks.
Or Infect. Infect.
Oh, Infect, yeah.
If you... people play that deck.
Yeah. Vines and Groundswell also show up in Infect, for what it's worth. Rancor shows up in Boggles, but there's not really this isn't one of those decks where you buy it and then you can be like, all right, well, I can just buy 2 more cards and I have this other deck.
Right. But so this is a deck with a lot of expensive cards, but it's also a tier 1 deck.
Yes, this is a solid tier 1, and it's never really dropped that far below there.
No, it's always in the top 4 or 5.
Yeah, this is a really solid deck. And it does have a decent amount of customization. So we're kind of going to move into the Maybeboard. And since we're covering a tier 1 deck this week, let's talk about options for Stompy.
The tech.
The tech.
The sweet tech.
One thing, there was actually a 5.0 list that recently did this, running Elephant Guide. And Elephant Guide is 2 and a green. Let me actually pull it up real quickly here so I can get the exact wording. It's an enchantment for 2 and a green, aura. And
it has totem armor.
No, it doesn't.
Oops.
Come on, man. Enchanted creature is +3/+3. When enchanted creature dies, create a 3/3 green elephant creature token.
Oh, okay. I know that. Just another way to get your minions all sticky.
Yeah. It gives you staying power. And also +3/+3 as a permanent effect in the form of an aura is not bad. And it also kind of mitigates the 2-for-1 nature of playing auras.
You'll get a creature.
Yeah.
Other cards that I don't know if are on the Maybeboard, Shidden of Life's Roar.
Oh, yeah.
Used to be a very popular Stompy card. That's a channel creature. It's a 1/2.
And channels for, I think, a green, 2 green and a generic.
And what channel means is it's kind of like Blood Rush, right?
It's kind of like Blood Rush, except it does weird things that Blood Rush never did.
Right. So when you channel Shidden of Life's Roar on a creature, all of your opponent's creatures must block that creature. Or if you just play Shidden of Life's Roar, everything must... It's like a lure effect. Everything must block the Shidden of Life's Roar.
And that was used to, break up a board stall where you just go, okay, I'm going to channel this onto this Quirion Ranger and then swing for lethal.
And when you channel a creature, I don't think you discard it, do you?
Yes, you do.
You do? Okay. So it's a lot like Blood Rush.
It is almost exactly like Blood Rush, except I think with Blood Rush, it was always templated as the creature got the pump of the Blood Rushed creature's power.
And also the creature must be attacking for you to Blood Rush it.
Oh, that's true. That is definitely one of the major differences. You can channel at any point during your turn.
Yeah. And also Brindleshote used to see play in this sideboard.
It's 1/1 for 1 and a green.
Yeah, when it dies, you get a 3/3 4.
Which was I feel in some ways that was like Young Wolf's big sibling. It just felt so bad to use removal on it unless you had the backup immediately.
Yeah.
Especially because unlike Young Wolf, there was no way to do graveyard shenanigans with a relic or anything.
You just get 3/3.
Yeah.
And then you Rancor the 3/3.
Unless you Magma Spray or something else to make sure it exiles when it dies. There's a 3/3. It's happening.
So sorry, keep going. Those were 2 that we explicitly don't have on the Maybeboard, and I just wanted to talk about them before we got more into the customization options.
Those are also things that have seen play and have 5-0'd. So, that is relevant. Next, we got Renegade Freighter, and I've tried this in Stompy.
So you liked it, right?
I liked it. There were times where it got stuck in my hand, though. Again, another 3 mana thing. So 3 generic. It is a vehicle. It's a 4/3, crew 2, notably, we'll get into that later. And when it attacks, it gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. So it is functionally a 3 mana, turn your dudes into a 5/4 trampler. The big thing is you have Quirion Ranger, so you can crew something. You can crew up the freighter and then untap and swing with the creature you crewed with.
Right, or in the case of Nettle Sentinel, you could tap Nettle Sentinel to crew it, and then play another creature, and then untap the Nettle Sentinel.
Yep. And the big catch with this is 3 mana is sometimes a lot in this deck. You'd probably want to go up to 17 lands in order to play this. I think the list I was running it in had 17 or 18 lands in it, and there were definitely times where it sat in my hand and did nothing. Every time it came down, though, it felt unbeatable. It's so huge. One of the big catches, if you're in a meta with a lot of lightning bolts, there is a period where you can kill it. Its ability still has to go on the stack to pump itself up to a 4/4 and give it trample, or a 5/4, sorry. Mm-hmm. So it does have the boon that it gets around sorcery speed removal completely. It also helps negate some sideboard cards. Delver occasionally will play either Curse of Chains or Narcolepsy, which it's an aura that taps down the creature every upkeep. There is a small window where your creature untaps and the ability goes on the stack, and in response to it, you can crew up.
It also cannot be coral netted.
That's true. Coral Net is a sideboard card that comes in against green. It's also, an artifact, although not many people are playing Cop Green. So it definitely interacts in a different way. You don't really have. It does make you worse again in the mirror because they're going to be bringing in enchantment removal, which oftentimes in green is also incidentally artifact removal.
In the case of Gleeful Sabotage and Natural State, both of them.
Oh yeah, Natural State hits this, doesn't it?
Yeah, Natural State's pretty good against Renegade Phaedra. And it'd be like a 1 of, right?
I was playing it as a 2 of, and I think one of the other things is this deck has no real way to draw cards. So I'm pretty sure that there were games where if I had drawn into it, I would have been frustrated because it just would have done nothing. It would have been a dead draw.
Right. But it's a powerful card, and I stand by our assessment of the card, which is that it makes bad decks much better.
Yeah, and I don't.
But I don't know if Stompy needs that, right?
I was gonna say I don't think Stompy's that bad a deck in terms of putting out a clock. I will say though that when I played this, I one time at least once got to live the dream of kicking a Vines of Vastwood onto it and just swinging in for 9 trample damage is
chugga chugga woo woo.
Yep. Thomas is coming to town. Then last thing I wanted to talk about, the sideboard slot that is taken up in this list by Scattershot Archer. There's some options. We talked about Aerial Volley. Aerial Volley is an instant for 1 and a green. Deal 3 damage divided as you choose between any number of creatures with flying. Now, Scattershot's great against, for example, Battle Screech. Battle Screech creates a bunch of 1/1 flying tokens. It just murders them. Aerial Volley, on the other hand, lets you do something like against Delver, for example, kill a Delver and a fairy. Mm-hmm. Or kill 3 fairies. So the question really comes down to what does the meta look like in terms of flyers? Are you seeing a bunch of core Skyfishers? Because Aerial Volley is much better against core Skyfisher.
Basically a green bolt in that case.
Yeah, it's basically a green bolt that can only target creatures. But Scattershot's much better against Delver. So meta call. There's also Takedown, which showed up in Kaladesh. Takedown is 1 green for a modal spell. Choose 1. Either deal 1 damage to each creature with flying, so a 1-use Scattershot Archer, or deal 4 damage to target creature with flying.
And it had a picture of a ballista being aimed at a drake.
Yeah, and it's got a drake mentioned in the text, and it did feel a little sarcastic when I first saw it.
On the nose.
Yeah. But with that, you're getting the variable. You either get targeted removal for 1 creature, or you get a 1-use Scattershot Archer.
Which, if we're being realistic, Electricity does that already. Mm-hmm. So it's not like that's a bad thing for it to be 1 use.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. It really comes down to a little bit of preference. I tend to prefer Aerial Volley. Scattershot Archer is nice, and it can be repeatable, which is good, but you're a deck that's not trying to play the long game, and having an instant speed so you don't have to wait a turn for it to survive feels really, really strong to me. In the Delver matchup, it's none of these options besides Takedown are killing Spire Golem.
Right.
I just really, really like Aerial Volley. On the other hand, in Delver, they probably have Dispel in the board, which will hit that and none of the others because Takedown's a sorcery. So pros and cons, really.
This deck, like we said, very techable to your own meta. None of these options are straight up better than any other ones. The deck just gets to play a lot of really interesting cards that do similar things differently enough that you could consider them all each their own option.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases,
there's a reason it's a tier 1 deck.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is, especially with this list, is if you really wanted to grind with this, a lot of the key pieces are the expensive parts, like the ones that don't change a lot, like your Quirion Rangers, your Nettle Sentinels, your Rancors and paper. I don't know how much those are.
And I mean, honestly, if we're being realistic here, this is a great way to get around buying Hydra and Pyroblast. So,
that is true. It is one of the tier 1 decks that runs none of the blasts. And I I mean, that's worth something, right? Especially if you're working on a budget. And $50 for a tier 1 deck is, well, I know some of our viewers definitely don't have the budget to just go out and drop $50 on Magic cards. It's not bad. Like, I'm willing to bet this has got to be one of the cheaper tier 1 decks online, at least. For exactly the reason you mentioned, no Hydro or Pyroblast in the board, which are still like $8 a pop.
No Gorilla Shaman either.
No Gorilla Shaman either.
No Magilla Gorillas.
But like the rest of the deck is all the customizable stuff, and those are always cheap. Like Sheenan of Life's Roar, I think, is a cent on MitGo and maybe 10 in paper.
Yeah, it's a cheapo.
Renegade Freighter is like 10 cents in paper, 1 online. Like I think Elephant Guide is probably the most expensive. Actually, no, it just got reprinted at Common and EMA. So like none of these cards are expensive outside of that core little bunch that you're going to be playing anyway, right? So
solid investment, especially if you're interested in green.
And this is definitely one of those decks where you see people who like grind this weekly or daily, and they're just super into Stompy. And I think it does have a decent amount of play. It's not personally my cup of tea. I'm not an aggro player. I've said this
we
before.
know, Mike.
I've said this before, but like I've tried it out. It definitely it engaged me for a while, and then I was like, okay, I kind of get this.
Too linear.
Yeah, it's linear. It has some amount of like weird lines that I appreciated as a control player, because like I definitely enjoy decks that give me a wide variety of games, and this definitely has that. On the other hand, it's not something that I'm like running out to play again, especially like in paper where we've got one event a week, so I might as well make it worth it. So do we actually want to talk about like Stompy's role in the meta?
Yeah, sure. Casual little discussion.
Yeah. So Stompy, as we've mentioned multiple times, has always kind of been a tier 1 list, and for a long time it was kind of this you kind of had like a little one of those rock paper scissors kind of things with this, Delver, and Mono Black, where those are the top 3 decks, and Stompy beat Delver kind of beat Mono Black, and Mono Black beat Stompy. And now we've kind of seen like something completely different.
Do you mean tonight the circle is broken forever?
Yes.
To quote a Merciful Fate song at you.
But it still maintains like a high level of success, and part of that is we earlier described it kind of like a green burn deck, right? What do we have what does this list have that burn doesn't?
Reach.
Reach, and the fact that your sources of damage stick around. Like,
right.
Burn definitely gets the best mana cost to immediate damage ratio. This just the things stick around. Like, if you don't deal with something with a Rancor on it, it's a lightning bolt every turn.
And I know a lot of our listeners are probably not that into Hearthstone, but it reminds me a lot of the Zoo decks in Hearthstone, where the whole thing is minions who, when they die, they bring another creature appears. And so that's the way that those decks are able to snowball against other decks, is by maintaining those sticky minions, they call it, and being able to keep
maintaining board position.
Yeah, maintaining board presence.
Like right now, Burn is playing what, like 8 creatures and
Thermo and Keldon Marauders.
Yeah. And 4 of those only last 1 turn and are functionally just a burn spell that sometimes gets blocked.
Right. And then the other one is just like removal magnet.
Yeah. So I think the big thing is, yes, it's kind of a green burn deck, right? It's a little bit better than Burn, though, and I think that's why it has the staying power. It also doesn't
Burn is not really a tier 1 deck.
Burn is no longer a tier 1 deck. That is correct, because oh my god, there are so many good sideboard cards against it.
Yeah, and also like the gain lands, just like incidental life gain.
Yeah.
Cop Red is a big one.
Yep.
But yeah, it Pulse now.
Yeah.
But it's mostly just like, I feel like there's so many little ways to gain life in Pauper.
Yeah. And I think with this, even if your opponent is playing the gain lands, like the gain lands aren't time walking you. They're making one of your pump spells a little bit less good. Like maybe Groundswell winds up kind of being just giant growth, but I feel like as long as you're getting giant growth or better rates, a lot of the time you're okay with it.
Right.
And part of the deck's staying power is become the fact that it now is morphed into a more a much more removal resistant version.
Right. And I mean,
go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, also just like Rancor. You know, Rancor is almost impossible to get rid of, and it's just so good.
So actually, I know I mentioned it earlier, the thing with Wild Mongrel being part of a cycle. Do you know that Rancor is part of a cycle?
I believe you told me this once, but I don't know what the rest of them do.
I don't remember what the rest of them do either. I think one of them's a pacifism, one of them's a debuff.
One of them's Undying Rage, or is that not really in that cycle?
Undying Rage is from Time Spiral.
Okay, it's its own thing.
Actually, I'm realizing that there's a decent amount of cards in here that are all like part of a cycle. Like Vault Scourge is part of a cycle.
What?
Yeah.
What cycle is Vault Scourge part of?
There is a cycle of common artifact creatures with Phyrexia mana costs.
Oh, I remember the blue one is like a 2/1 flyer.
Yeah.
That's like really terrible.
The green one has 2 Phyrexia mana symbols and is like a 5/5 trampler. It's like 4 mana for a 5/5 trampler, and you pay 4 life.
Maybe we should play that in Stompy.
Anyway. Yeah. So another thing is, just the fact that like you get to play stuff like River Boa is just really solid against Delver. And
it's like almost unbeatable, right?
You just get to play like a lot of incidentally very good cards in the main deck. Like Young Wolf does not stop Mono Black in its tracks or Teachings in its tracks. It does. It's enough of a road bump where it makes it harder for them to win that matchup. So
yeah, it's a headache.
Yeah. I think one of its big strengths right now is the fact that it does have access to these kind of incidental hate cards that it can main deck because they're not bad. And it can just kind of say, okay, I'm running these creatures that are slightly worse than some of my other options. Like I'm not running like Uktabi Drake, the 2/2 flyer with haste and echo.
That I don't think that card's very good.
It used to see play in Green 1, which was a Stompy variant.
Okay.
That just ran all the it did not run non-1 drops. It just
did it play Jungle Lion?
I don't remember the list well
because that card's not very good either.
No, Jungle Lion's not exactly great. It's a 2/1 for a green that can't block.
It cannot intercept.
Yes, it's from Portal, so it says it cannot intercept because Portal was a mess. But I think one of the big things is it does get to play these it gets lists are playing Vault Scourge main, and Burn kind of has a hard time with that. Like they have to waste a removal spell on that creature, or they can't win. And
you essentially save yourself a life that way.
Exactly. Even if it never connects, you're saving yourself at least probably 3 life.
Well, 1 because it costs 2 for the Vault Scourge.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Unless they Searing Blaze it, in which case you're just it's a net.
Yeah.
It's a big net negative there.
Yeah. Against Searing Blaze, it feels pretty bad. I'm trying to think about other matchups against Tron, you're just faster.
Right. And I piloted this deck to success at F&M, and it's just like the deck is fast and it puts people on the back foot. We're a format where if you're in 2 colors, you're playing lands that come into play tapped.
Yeah.
And so just being able to be like, they go turn 1, you go turn 1 Nettle Sentinel, they go turn 1 tap land. You're like, all right, turn 2 Rancor, Skargan Pit Skulk. It's like,
yes, I have 6 power on the board turn 2, and you have gained 1 life.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And yeah, it's we said it before, Pauper is a game of inches, and if you're able to just come swinging out of the gate like that, a lot of decks are going to have a hard time making up those lost inches. And so we really see Stompy as sort of, and I'm a little hesitant to call it the premier aggro deck of the format, but that's only because Affinity exists. And Affinity is like its own beast where it comes at you on all these different axes and is incredibly good, and only really handsome people are allowed to play it. And, but I would call Stompy definitely one of the better aggro decks in the format. And
I would argue that as in terms of a pure aggro deck, it's probably the closest we have because there is white weenie or the white aggro decks that sometimes will crop up, for a while. There's goblins, which kind of has like a weird combo tribal element and can kind of play control at times in the aggro matchup.
Goblins is a weird deck. There's also red deck wins, which is sort of like one of those like right under the skin aggro decks.
Yeah. And that one's kind of had mixed success. I wouldn't call it tier 1 yet, just because.
But it's 5-0'd its fair share.
Yeah, it's definitely a non-zero factor in the format. But like I would class Affinity as like an aggro deck that does have a combo element to it. Like you definitely have those hands that just kind of go very slowly. Whereas if you have a land in your opener and not more than 2 lands, like Stompy feels fine. You don't need much past that. Like there are definitely hands that are better. Like you kind of want like 2 lands, 2 pump spells, 3 creatures. But I feel like Affinity definitely has like an element of a combo deck in it, like needing to mull into good hands.
Right. Into these nuts.
Terrible.
But yeah.
And like Delver like has an aggro element, but it's definitely more of a tempo deck at the end of the day.
The fish, if you will.
Yeah. But definitely like I would feel comfortable saying that this is the premier aggro deck. And I'm sure there are people who will disagree with us. You know, we all got opinions.
Yeah, we got them.
But it serves a good role. Like it kind of forces the dirtily do nothing control decks to have early answers. And we've talked about this before. You know, a healthy metagame has different qualities in it. It has different participants in it.
And you know, speaking of healthy metagames, ours feels pretty darn healthy right now. I would say that.
Do we have any repeats last night? Except me and Josiah were both on.
I just meant like as a whole, the Pauper metagame, Moto included.
Yeah.
I don't think there really is a definite best deck. I know, you know, in the community, some people are a little fed up with Affinity right now, but all it takes to beat Affinity is to look at your sideboard and say, I'm going to beat Affinity every time I play against it, and you're going to win every time.
So how much of Affinity, you know, being a little dominant, do you think is the fact that like what red deck is really good right now?
Boros tokens. And they play Gorilla Shamans.
Yeah.
Really, it comes down to you need to draw your hate cards. Affinity is a super easy deck to hate out, but then it's like in Modern, when people forget about it, that's when it's the best deck. Is because it'll like, you know, win a tournament, and then everyone will remember that Affinity is actually a deck they have to tech for still.
Yeah, I don't want to say that like, oh, the metagame's busted. You know, Affinity is just running wild and no one can deal with it because that's false. It's a false equivalency. I will say, you know, the Atog Fling combo never feels good to be on the receiving end of, but it's something that like
with the Atog Fling themselves, Mike.
well, I'm just saying, like, it's one of those things like Gush is a patently busted card, and I don't blink when people play it. And like, sure, you know, we're not in a format with duels where you get to do really busted stuff,
or fast bond,
or anything like that. Like, most Gushes are pretty tame in the great scheme of casting Gush.
Aaron cast a Gush against me. It's still just lost, like, abysmally. He drew like more lands or something, you know?
Yeah. Like, I definitely feel like Atog Fling is certainly obnoxious to come up against, and most of the time it comes down to, do I have a counterspell or not? If so, I'm losing. Or like, I have gotten there occasionally with like instant speed life gain.
Like Feed the Clan or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's not like Drake. Where it was like actively crowding out other decks.
It certainly isn't. It's definitely just taken first for the time being. And, you know, also looking at Boros tokens, like there's some level of like the metagame settling a little that needs to happen. Kind of figuring out like what are the best answers for the tier 1 decks that we have right now, and seeing if those answers are good enough to actually shift things around. Like,
but I'm pretty sure the stats that Almond pulled up recently, like everything was around 11% among the top tier decks, and like
we're no longer at like a 10% difference between the number 1 and number 2 deck.
Right, everything was within like a couple points of a percent with each other. So like that's good.
And of course, you know, we've only had about like a month or so to look at the meta post Drake.
Right. The Jeskai Drake is still showing up. I saw a Jeskai Drake deck like get tagged somewhere on Goldfish.
So I think the issue is that it's registering some versions of Morosatron are showing up as Jeskai Drake, and I have no idea why.
Probably because they're really similar, just minus Drake.
Yeah, although I wouldn't have called the Drake-tron deck Jeskai, but...
No, me either. So I'm not sure where that's coming from.
These things happen. Errors happen. There was also... We never touched on this on the show. There was like a day where Drake was legal in leagues.
Oh, really?
There was a post on the subreddit. Something happened during one of the weekly updates, and they actually had to take leagues down for like a half hour. Like
really?
Across MitGo.
I missed this.
Yeah, they never explained exactly what went wrong, but something went wrong.
Drake was legal?
Yeah, so someone had their Drake list still like in their binder on MitGo, and they clicked into it, and it didn't show the little warning symbol when your deck's illegal. And they clicked into it to see, and they tried joining a tournament practice game, and it let them do that. And then they tried joining a league, and it let them do that. The person was, good about it. They quit out and, filed for refund on the league. But there was a very short moment where Drake was legal, which, not really amounting to a whole hill of beans, but there was a quick little chuckle. And thankfully, Wizards got on it very quickly as soon as they were alerted to it, and life went on.
Na 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 na, life goes on.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're closing in on an hour here. We do want to mention we will not have an episode next week. It's the holidays.
Yeah, sorry everyone. We're traveling, seeing family, and I know that we are really big about not missing episodes. We didn't even miss them when Mike went and got married. But you got to take a break sometimes, and we just. We're just both going to be too busy to record an episode.
Did I tell you that I actually edited some of those episodes while on my honeymoon, basically?
Yeah, Mike has done so much for this show, and I haven't.
But in all seriousness, we're gonna miss a week. I'm moving soon. We're gonna be figuring stuff out. I might be on some episodes. I might not be.
Yeah, we don't really know how that's all going to shake out yet. We're still planning for it.
We will have episodes though.
Yeah, we're not missing for that. Just this holiday season, we'll be missing one next Sunday, which will be Christmas Day.
Is it actually?
I don't know. I have to look. It's probably not actually.
Yeah, today's the 18th. Yeah, it'll actually be Christmas Day.
So that's there you go. Good reason to miss.
No Christmas presents for our fans. Yeah. That's what happens. But in all seriousness, we love the sport. Just don't worry. We got to get it out there. There will not be an episode next week. Do not adjust your monitor. Continue on with life as you would.
Keep calm and pop on. But thanks for joining us today. Please check below this video or the description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you that if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility, even if you leave a bad review. Keep that in mind. If you've got a deck list or an idea for a topic, feel free to contact us either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to Pat's Games for giving us a place to play Pauper, and of course Elle for the awesome theme track, Quantitative. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.